Hi all, it's Jan of the Jan Files. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I hope you will. I intend to grow that so I can hear from you and we can talk actually directly to one another. That's my hope, American Voices. But I'm going to probably, I'm not sure the direction of what I'm talking about is going to take because it's been floating around in my head. And I don't know what the answer is, but I want to talk about it. I want to talk about lying. I want to talk about how 77 million Americans voted for Donald Trump and how they completely ignored his lying. From 2016 on, Donald Trump is known as a consummate liar. I mean, they've documented, I don't know, probably was 18,000 lies before. I'm sure it's well over 25,000, if not 30,000 lies at this point. But my whole focus on this conversation is how can so many Americans believe these lies? Now, let's just start a little bit from the beginning because, there are too many to cover. But Donald Trump was not a great businessman. Donald Trump bankrupted 6 companies, okay? Donald Trump became famous because he was a television host and The Apprentice. That's really what made him. Those of us who lived on the East Coast or in New York City, as I did at the time, knew what a creep he was. He was awful. And all of his sexual escapades were all over the place. Page 6, New York Post, Daily News. He loved that. He actually created a persona, and he would pretend to be this guy, and he would call, the newspapers and the gossip columnists to talk about Donald Trump. I mean, this guy has been a fraud from day one. So let's just even give people 2016, even though they had no problem with him chortling about grabbing a woman's pussy. Okay. People were completely willing to just overlook that. People you thought had morals were completely willing to overlook that because they wanted change. And I'm going to interpret how they wanted change. My interpretation of their desire for change was to make sure we never had a black president again. And this idea that, you know what? Black people had come too far. That's my feeling. Now, I base this on what has happened since that time. Because so much of what Donald Trump has done that got him to where he is today has been to focus on racism. And what I mean by that, and I don't mean just black people, I mean people of different races that obviously aren't white. And there are so many white people out there that are afraid or think that black people and Hispanic people are taking their jobs, which couldn't be further from the truth. There's no statistic that backs that up. He was counting on that. He was, driving into that with them. He wanted them to believe that this other person that had invaded our country, including black people, were not worthy, shouldn't be here, and should be kicked out of the country to make it white again. And that appealed to so many Americans that they willingly gave up their ability to tell right from wrong. They willingly gave it up. And even now, when you try to have a conversation or you're on social media, you're going to say, if you say something like, okay, well, here's the video. These American citizens were arrested. They were put in detention. There are going to be people that will say that didn't happen when it's clear it did. It's not it's AI. It's clear that it didn't. They'll say that didn't happen. Or if you say, okay, veterans, and you can show them that veterans have been deported, people who fought for our nation, you don't have to be a citizen to do that, were thrown out. They were deported. People who literally put their lives. And these people will say that didn't happen. Kristi Noem has now lied. I don't know how many. She's up there with Donald Trump saying that she hasn't arrested American citizens. Bullshit. She hasn't arrested veterans. Bullshit. And so this defiance of the truth. Now, I know there are probably all kinds of psychological or studies about what and how we get here. Here's my truth. Here's what I think is happening. Again, it's my opinion, folks. People are so afraid. They're so afraid. White people, let's get white people and those who think they're adjacent to whiteness are afraid. Of what exactly? Okay, are they afraid of the jobs? No, that's not really happening. And if you're living in Appalachia, your poverty has nothing to do with immigrants or Black people. This has got to do with American corporations abandoning you, right? But all of this stuff that has happened in the past, and even now, is turned into us versus them, and it's white versus people of color, or white versus just anybody who's different than their version of whiteness. And one of the things they do is when you point out the truth, and it's very obvious, okay, that it's the truth, and there are those situations that people will deflect. They'll say, oh my God, I don't care what's happening to these immigrants. Let's look what happened to Lake and Riley. That's what they do, right? They bring up one horror and then use one awful murder of a young woman. I think she was also raped. So rape and murder of a young American woman. That was horrible. And then they put it up there as if somehow we don't care about that. Of course we do. We also care about presidents who are protecting pedophiles, by the way. But you're going to throw out that young woman's name as if that's a reason to abandon our laws, abandon our humanity. And this is what they do time and time again. Trump does it, all of those in his administration. They are all liars. And at some point, I think priests and pastors are finally starting to step up. There is nothing Christian, folks, about lying. There is zero. Christianity, you don't lie. That's not what their tenet is. And you also take care of our neighbor. You also look out for strangers. And these people want nothing to do with that. Okay? They just want to hate. They want to hate that other person that doesn't look like them. Because on some deep level, they're afraid they are going to take their spot. I don't know what spot that is, they think. But somehow they want to blame them for where they are in their life. Or they're just a tech bro like Bill Ackman or David Sachs or Mark Andreessen and all these big dudes with billions. Elon Musk is one of the biggest fucking racists there are. So anyway, and all of those guys, they perpetuate this life. They perpetuate the otherness of it. They know better. But you know why they do it? Because they want power. Because that is more important than anything else. It's more important than being a good human being. It's more important than telling the truth. Now, I know I wasn't raised that way. Lying was a big deal in my house. My mother was a Yankee, so to speak, with that very puritanical upbringing. It didn't extend to her politics, by the way. I am my mother's daughter, and I am my father's daughter. And I am very what's the word? I owe so much to them for bringing me up the way they did. because they brought me up to care about other human beings. And they brought me up to stand up. And I interpreted it as I got older in my own way. But I've been doing this for a long time, folks. I did it when I was just this big during Kent State. Okay, you can figure it out. I was in 6th grade and I wore a black armband to school for Kent State. When I was in 3rd grade, I marched with my sister, who is older than I am, at a candlelight march from Martin Luther King. First time I saw my father cry was when Martin Luther King was assassinated. This is deep within me, and I am so thankful for how I was raised, because I don't know what's going on here. I mean, when I was little, everybody thought it was bad to lie. Now, nobody gives a shit. At least those who support Trump. They lie, they support his lies, they know that shit's not good. They lie about the economy, they lie. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and it's one big damn lie. Now, as I said when I first started, I don't know where this is going because I don't have the answer here. I only know that unless we start on a personal level calling people out for that, this isn't going to end either, right? We have to find a way, and again, thinking as I'm talking, we have to find a way where these lies start being really focused on, especially the media. Because if I hear one more person say this falsehood, or they misrepresented, or this is disinformation. No, folks, it's fucking lying. And the reason they don't use the word lie is because it's more potent than falsehood, right? So the media, although I'm starting to see it now, has been deliberately not using the word lie. And that has to change. If one thing changes, that has to change because we should be calling them out. And Kristi Noem today was on one of the, I don't know which morning Sunday show it was, lying, but was also telling us not to say Jonathan Ross's name. Whose name did she say not to speak? Jonathan Ross. Yeah, well, Jonathan Ross was the one who murdered Renee Good. And if you look at the legitimate non-lying videos, you will see that he was not hit by the car. We know he never ended up in the hospital. He was not harmed in any fashion. And when they show that video, when you think it sounds like he was hit by the car, no, he dropped his phone, folks. Jonathan Ross, is it Ross or Russo? Shit, now I think it's Ross. Anyway, so that name, that Jonathan Ross name that Kristi Noem doesn't want us to say because she's feeling he's going to be doxxed. I'm sorry. If somebody asked me a question about who shot Renee Good, I'm going to say Jonathan Ross. Aren't you? Aren't you going to post that? Because I'm not advocating for anybody to harm him, but I will advocate for him taking responsibility for what he did and being prosecuted by the federal government and at a minimum, but thankfully the state government. So anyway, folks, this whole lying thing, I have to say, I can remember, and this is stupid, but it just kind of goes to the level of how I knew this was wrong. I must have been about 5 or 4, and I was in the grocery store, and they had one of those things for Band-Aids. I don't know if it was a Band-Aid, but anyway, they had a display, and they had a can of Band-Aids. And so I opened it, and I took a Band-Aid out, and I left with it. And I remember feeling, oh my God, I stole something. Now, I don't remember the rest of it. Again, I was probably like 5. But inside me, this feeling of I knew it was wrong, right? That feeling has never left me. I know if something is wrong. I know it, and when I do something wrong, because I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to ever say, but I do not lie, and this isn't about me, so I don't want to keep talking about that. But the point is, where is this with Americans? How have we gotten to a place where teachers are lying? I'm not so surprised, but policemen are lying. But teachers are lying. I mean, at what point has the whole idea of right versus wrong collapsed in our society?